Good morning, Pascale. Thank you so much for joining me. So today I'm joined by Pascale, who is a parenting coach, and she's the founder of Moment of Parenting. Pascale, tell me more about what you do.
Thank you, Somaya, for having me. So what I do is I offer workshops, consultations, and coaching for parents. I am a parenting coach and I work with parents on transforming their relationship with their children from a stressful, overwhelming, and anxious one to a more peaceful, intentional, and present one.
So that sounds like the ideal place to be as a parent. And I'm sure you probably get asked this all the time. It sounds great, but it's so much harder to do as a parent, you know? And I'm really excited to dig deeper into all of that when we have our conversation today. Tell me more about your background, Pascale, because I read this in your bio and I think it's really strong in it, a comment in itself. So I'll read out to you what you wrote and I'd love for you to expand on it. So I want our kids not to need to go on a journey to find themselves in their 30s.
Yeah, I think this is where it started. You know, I myself was in my 30s at what I call now the end of a career journey in the corporate world. I was in my mid-30s, I had two little kids, and I would be stuck when someone would ask me, what do you love to do? What's your passion? What's your hobby? And I'm not talking about, something superficial. I'm talking about real passionate, something that I want to do. And I realized I never stopped, I never stopped just doing what's expected next from me. We go into school, we get, good grades, good degrees, you go into university, I did my MBA, you get your internship, your job, your promotions, your wedding, etc., your first kid, your second kid. But then I never took time to actually stop and ask myself, what do I really want? Who am I really? And especially after I became, a full-time working mom of two, that I felt I don't know my own identity. I know I'm a mom, I know I'm an employee, but besides that, who am I really? That I decided I'm gonna find out. And I realized I'm not the only one. There were so many around me doing the exact same thing, whether openly or in discretion. And I realized, why are we all doing this? And from my reading, from my studies, it made sense that in our childhood, we were not encouraged, we were not empowered to voice out who we really are, what do we really want. We were more encouraged or forced to fit in a mold, to do as expected by parents, by a school, teachers, society, everyone around us. We were forced to stop this inner voice and start to please others or to do things out of fear. And I realized if that starts from childhood, I'm not going to let this happen to my kids. And when I became a coach and when I chose, this is what I'm passionate about, this helped us and our family so much that I want to pass this on. I want this to be my work with others because this is giving me fulfillment. And yeah, that's how it landed for me. I want to stop the next generation from losing themselves while they're young and empower them to listen to their inner voice, make sure they feel their self-worth, that they don't need others to approve of them.
I mean, that is so relatable, and I'm sure so many women out there will be able to relate to that. I'm not sure if it's the same for men. I know you sort of coach both moms and dads, so maybe you have an answer or more of an idea in that sense. But I know, like you say, so many women that experience that. And it seems to happen primarily after they give birth. Maybe, you kind of have to reassess the situation of where you're at. And so until that point, a lot of us don't slow down until you have to. and maybe that's what it is. I'm obviously not sure, but it's really interesting that you say that. And when I read that quote, like, it just stood out to me so much because it's so relatable.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's, before you have kids, you're still an individual taking care of yourself, whether that is in your career or maybe as a partner, as a spouse. However, when you have kids, they become this, physically, this priority of, I need to make sure they are alive, they are safe, they are well. And you give so much out of yourself that you feel there's nothing left. And that's where it starts. Now, about your comment about men, I definitely think they go through the same thing. And if you think, depending on cultures as well, men are taught more that emotions are taboo, they're not allowed. A boy that's crying, that's a no-no. A man also is taught that they need to hold the fort, they need to, to support their family, to provide. And I think they sink into that role so much that they also let go of themselves. And if they're not meeting expectations, whether that's their own expectations or expectations of others in that category, they immediately feel like failures and they don't find fulfillment somewhere else. So I feel like it's definitely the case for both parents. We might manifest it in different ways, but it's there for everyone.
And your goal is to support the parents in being more mindful with their parent and with their children, sorry. And so if they're more mindful with their children, then they will, in effect, the children themselves will be able to regulate their emotions better and understand their emotions better. Is that correct? And is that how I'm reading it correctly?
That's correct. However, there's a trick here that I don't usually promote, which is, yes, parents come to me because they want to do right by their children. They want to learn how to help their children regulate their emotions, how to be more mindful with them. But what they quickly find out when they're working with me is that you have to start with yourself. You can't act mindful. You can't act peaceful. You have to be mindful and be peaceful. And our children, they learn like monkeys, they copy us. If I am someone who's nervous, who's anxious, who's angry around them, but I'm telling them, be calm, breathe, do this, they're not going to do as I say. They're going to do what I do. So the work, and that's what we start with our workshop, this first part of the workshop is always, it starts with you. We start to look into what are our triggers. How do we deal with our emotions? What are our stress responses? What are our limiting beliefs? And what can be calming tools, centering tools that we can use? Because when a challenging moment occurs, let's say a toddler tantruming, the most important thing that I can do for my toddler is to keep myself calm. It's nothing that I say to them. It's nothing that I do for them. It's just keeping myself calm, because this calm energy will allow them to kind of ride their wave of emotion, and it will be contagious. They will learn from me how to deal with it.
I love that. So let's dig into that a bit deeper. Let's say we have a toddler, we're out in the supermarket and they're having a tantrum. We've seen it, we've witnessed it, we've
Yeah,
been there, and it's
been
a
there.
horrible experience as a mother, especially in public. It feels way worse. So let's
Yeah.
talk about how you would advise, if you are going down this route of trying to be a mindful parent, what would be an ideal or a more appropriate way to deal with that to help both yourself and the child regulate?
So it's curious. What you said is exactly true. We start by asking ourselves, why is it so much worse when my toddler tantrums in public versus in our house. And that comes down to our own triggers as adults. It's not about the child. The child is displaying the same way they're processing their emotions, and they don't care where they are. If I'm at home, if I'm at school, or if I'm in the supermarket, I don't care. Whereas the parent, they immediately feel judged. So instead of staying, centered in the moment, focusing on the situation that's happening, which is their child showing a behavior that is masking a need that is not communicated. What I start to feel as an adult, and I've been there, believe me, is, oh my God, people are looking at me. They're judging me. I'm a failure. I don't know how to control my kid. What was I thinking bringing my kid to the supermarket? Or you might be thinking, I'm late. You might be thinking, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this kid. They always do that. You might start to generalize and say, they always do that. They never let me shop. And you all are also aware of your surrounding. Oh, people judging, people looking, and you start to feel more like a failure. And that's a perfect example of you not being in the moment, not being present, not being mindful, because you are gone from the moment. You are in the judgment, you are in the future, you are in the past, you are not here. So imagine that. What if you were another person walking by me who's not a parent, or maybe a parent, but you don't have your children with you. You're absolutely calm. You just came back from a spa. You're walking in the same aisle and you see my child tantruming and you see me stressed. Do you feel the same stress as me? Or I think what usually happens is you look at the child and you go like, oh, poor kid going through something. You might, if you're a mom, you might relate to the mom and you might look at her and you go like, nodding, like, I know, I've been there. The difference is one of these parents was deeply triggered and the other was not, because she had no attachment to any outcome. She didn't need the child to behave or to stay quiet or to stop embarrassing her. She was just present to what are the emotions displayed here. And that's ideally where we want to be. And I know it's hard. I acknowledge it's super hard and it needs a lot of practice. But ideally, that's where we want to be. We want to be a parent that goes like, oh, behavior, there's something behind it. There's a need. What's that need? Let's see. Is it snack time? Are we late for bedtime? Are they tired? Did they not sleep well last night? Have they seen a snack they really want and I just said no? Do they feel disappointed? Do they just need a little hug? Are they maybe overwhelmed with the sensory experience of this busy supermarket? Something is always behind a behavior. There's a need that is not properly communicated because this child has not yet learned to communicate verbally their emotions, and their brains aren't fully developed yet. So we need to do that work for them. We need to stay in the present, stay calm. We can be aware of our triggers and say, oh, thank you, trigger. I don't need you right now. This is not an emergency. I'm okay. I don't care about the judging eyes of others. What's most important for me here is to stay present with my child, stay calm, connect to them, stop what I'm doing for a second and say, hey, I see you. They want to feel seen. They want to feel heard, soothed. Give them a cuddle, chat to them. And trust me, the tantrum will pass much faster than if we try to avoid it or if we try to shush it and keep it calm.
I absolutely love that. I do have a question following on from that. So say that's your method as a parent or parents, you've decided that's your method of dealing with your child. Whether you have friends that are quite close and that may be around the child quite a lot, or family, or another caregiver, for example, and they have a different approach. because you hear it a lot, stop crying,
Yes.
you know, and then they do the distraction thing. That's very common. So I've experienced that a lot. So other caregivers do this thing where if they're crying, instead of like just stopping and letting them cry for a few minutes, because that's often, with my daughter, that's often all she needs, you know, she just needs to cry,
Yes.
she needs a hug, and then she'll just go off and do something else. But sometimes what I find is with other caregivers, and this is in the house caregivers, not like in educational
Yes.
setting, they often, what they do is they'll try and distract her away from her crying. Is that a miscommunication between the adults?
Mm. It definitely is. What I want to touch on 2 points here. First one is, yes, we as adults, all caregivers in the family, every adult living in our household needs to be on the same page. And the parent that wants this, they need to be responsible to kind of recruit the others and educate them, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your helper or a grandparent living with you, whoever that is. We need to have this conversation and explain, listen, this is the way I want my child to be raised. I want them to know that emotions are there to be felt. We need to feel them. We don't want to distract them. I want them to feel worthy, you know, that it's okay. You are welcome, however you are. And this is how you do it. And you need to train them depending on their way of doing things. I know it's different with each type of, you know, adult in the house, but it's so important that you sit together as a group, you know, call it a team meeting, and you work on, all right, what are our top priority, like our common values, the values that we will respect in this house. How are we going to be addressing situations such as this? And then when a situation happens and something happens in front of your eyes and you go, oh, that's not how I want things to be done, take note. Don't address it in the moment, because we don't want to show the child kind of a conflict right in front of them of like, no, don't do this, do that. Just take note and address it later. You know, go back to that person, say, remember how this happened, how this was laid out? Now, the way that I would ideally want to work with it is this. Now, the second thing I wanted to touch on is the transformation for each person might be much more difficult than others, depending on their childhood, how they were raised, and how ready they are in that moment. So if I, as a mom, today I feel ready to make that transformation, and that's brave work. That's really brave work, because that's you standing in the way of your generational, you know, parenting styles. And that's you saying, today it stops, and I'm not gonna parent on autopilot the way I was parented. And I want to learn what are different ways that we know better about now today because of all the scientific research or the psychological research. And I'm ready to say, I'm gonna do the hard work. Others might not be ready today. So we need to make space for that. We need to hold space for that. So you might need to give them some kind of tips and tricks in that way. You know, you might tell them, hey, try this instead of that, because it might not come naturally to them. It might not be instinctual, you know, for them. So we might need to help them, you know, arm them with a book or a podcast or a video or just a chat. Talk to them about how things were when they were a child and why do you think this is different. Don't expect everyone to hear once or twice about mindful or conscious or respectful parenting and decide like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, because it's hard work. The work expects you to be able to stop and say, yes, I'm getting so many triggers right now, but I'm gonna, you know, sit with them, be with them, and say, hey, triggers, I'm safe right now. I'm okay. I can, you know, be intentional. I can be at choice. and choose how I want to parent versus being on autopilot.
That's awesome. I mean, it just brings up a question in my head about, just to put a situation to it rather than it being a general question.
Yeah.
Often we're rushing to leave in the morning and we have to get out at a certain time. And, you know, we need the children to do X, Y, and Z, you know, before we go, whether that's with your support or by themselves if they're older. Especially with younger children, they don't really understand the concept of time and having to
Yes.
get somewhere. And as a parent or as an adult, that can be quite important. If you've got a meeting, if you've got work, you know, there's something that follows on from that. And this has happened in my personal experience. You know, give them the option: do you want to wear your blue shoes or your red shoes, whatever it might be? And then they say no to both. Now, from my reading, I've read that you have to have one of the two options that you give them is a default option that you choose if they don't select one of them. But that does lead to lots of tears and anger and frustration.
And that's okay. You know, I think we as parents hold this responsibility of my child has to be happy all the time. That's not true. You know, we don't need to be making them happy every minute. Them crying, them being frustrated, being disappointed is absolutely okay. What's not okay is, like you said, distracting them from the fact. So I would say, hey, listen, I know you're disappointed that you didn't get to do that, finish your game or whatever you wanted to do. I know you're frustrated that we have to rush and leave right now. But mommy has a meeting. We have to go. You know, your feelings are okay. You're welcome to keep crying in the car if you want to. And we hold space for that. And we, you know, don't get triggered by the crying because we understand the reason behind it. And that's okay. We can't make the child happy 100% of the time. You know, they are not robots. They are human beings. They need to express their whole range of emotions. You know, the difficult ones, the easy ones. And that's completely fine. Now, what I would do is, if it's a family that has this incident happen in a recurrent way, it happens every day, I would take a step back and ask, okay, should we maybe wake up 15 minutes earlier? You know, like, how do I avoid the stressful situation happening over and over again? Or maybe should the child not be given a choice of shoes? Should they choose the night before and we lay the outfit out together and that's it? You know, my daughter used to go through this in the morning. I mean, she has a school uniform, like she doesn't even get a choice. But it would take longer in the morning because, you know, she has to choose the bow that goes on her hair, the shoes. And what we do is now she chooses everything in the evening after her bath time. And that's it. In the morning, it takes her 1 minute to get dressed. So even if we know there's 5 minutes left before we leave, all we need to do is to remind her, like, time to put everything on. There, we removed the option of choice in the morning.
I like that because that means that it's usually when we're rushed that often we fall into our autopilot parenting, I think. Like for me,
Yes,
that's definitely when I feel that I'm less like aware because, like, you know, I'm just thinking like, okay, we need to do that next thing.
exactly. And that's our job, to stop and see, when do I get triggered? What are the things that get me triggered? So it could be the rush. So maybe I need to make sure that next time we give, you know, wider windows for preparation. It could be, for some people, the loud noise. For others, it could be something physical, like, you know, kids climbing on them, or, I don't know, feeling hot outside. Um, when we realize, when we are mindful enough to realize, oh, this is getting me triggered, it's not actually the child's actions. Because the child, if we look at their brain development, well, they don't know, like you said, they don't know about the 3 minutes, and they don't know, you know, they don't care mom has a meeting to rush to. If they find something interesting to do in that moment, and by interesting I mean it could be a box of tissues, that might be more important for them in that moment than getting out of the house on time for your meeting. So if we understand that this is not something I can expect from my child, and we understand that my triggers are actually coming from my worries of getting late to something, then I can deal with it. I can calm myself down. I can do my breathing. I can do whatever that brings me, calm. It could be some stretching. It could be a music that I listen to. It, for some people, it could be prayer, meditation, whatever it is, because it's not about the child. But often the sad thing that happens is we let it out on the child. You're delaying me. It's all because of you. It's funny, I was giving this example yesterday in one of my workshops of if you're inviting people over for dinner and it's going to happen once the kids are off to bed, and you're rushing, you're preparing food, you're setting up the table, you still need to get dressed and fix your face, and the kids are still not in bed. And the kids, they feel a different energy in the house. Things are happening, things are moving, and they're curious and they don't want to sleep, same as they do every day. What happens? Usually it's shouting at the kids, go to bed. Why don't you just go to bed and let me finish my work? But if we stop and think about it, it's not the child's fault. It's just me. I'm nervous. I'm rushed. I'm tired. I'm anxious about meeting a certain deadline. If I took 1 minute out of all of this chaos, became present with my child, connected deeply to them, and told them, hey, yeah, you see, something's happening. We're busy. We're preparing. You must be curious. You must want to know who's coming. You might allow an exception that day and say, all right, you know what? Stay up, read your book, and maybe, sleep a little bit later. And imagine the difference with the outcome of that story when you just take 1 moment to connect and explore what my triggers are right now.
I think your workshops would be incredible to walk away with. I think I would feel so empowered just doing one of your workshops. One thing I really love that you said in this conversation was that it's okay for us not to keep, it's not our job to make our children happy all the time. And I think that's where I really struggle with the aspect of conscious parenting, because for some reason, and maybe this is just the way I read whatever you see on social media, etc., is everything's about supporting them and calming them, and you just think that automatically means that they should be happy. But I love that you say that it's not that. It's just allowing them to feel their feelings.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, if someone is happy 100% of the time, and they don't explore what the difficult emotions are, they really also can't explore deep happiness. I feel like someone needs to play with the whole spectrum of feelings to be able to explore deep sadness and deep happiness at the same time. If you're always happy, do you even know what happy is? I mean, you're kind of living in a bubble, right? You're it's like a filtered situation. They need to know that I can feel sad and that's okay, and my parents will still love me. I don't need to act like I'm happy all the time for them to be okay around me. And that's why we also talk a lot about punishment or timeout. If we kind of shun away the child when they're displaying, crying or screaming or negative, behavior, for us, it might be, I'm teaching them a lesson. But for the child, the link they're making is immediately, they don't love me. They don't love me when I'm like this. So they either learn to please you by always hiding their emotions, or they just go to something else, somewhere else. And we are parents of young children, but for me, exercising to stay with them in difficult emotions, to let them know that I'm here for it, means I'm preparing for their teenage years. I don't want them to become teenagers when they go through something difficult. They feel like I can't come to my parents because they're not going to be here for it. They're going to, punish me or send me away. I want them to feel like I am the safest place you can come to. I am here to hold space for you. Because if they learn to just please us and make us happy, they're gonna transfer that into their peers when they're teenagers. They won't care about us when they're teenagers. They will start to care about, I'm gonna please my peers, my friends. And we don't want that. And then when they're adults, they're gonna start to please other people, their partners, their employers. And again, that's not what we want. We want them to please themselves, to, to honor their wants, their needs, and to feel their self-worth. So definitely let them be sad, let them be disappointed, let them be frustrated. Name it, name it, validate it, say it's okay. If I need to get my kid out of a play date and she starts crying, and I tell her, I know you're disappointed we were leaving early. I know you're disappointed, and that's okay. I feel disappointed too if I have to leave a party early, but we have to leave. We need to go. Maybe next time we can plan it better. Or what would you like me to do next time to support you? How can I make this easier for you?
So that's how you set boundaries in this kind of conscious parenting. So there is an end point, and you have to then stand your ground.
Definitely. That's often a common mistake. That's like a myth busting. With conscious parenting, mindful parenting, positive parenting everywhere, a lot of people think it's a permissive type of parenting. It's actually not. It's really clear boundaries, but you have to communicate these clear boundaries. You have to make them so clear and kind, and you have to be consistent with them. You have to respect them all the time. They need to be fair, and respect them consistently, communicate them kindly. Like I said, I know you're frustrated, I know you're disappointed, but it's time to go. I've already set an alarm 5 minutes ago. The alarm is on. We really need to be going. Maybe next time we can find a better way to do it, let's talk about it. And again, it depends on the kid's age. If the kid is really young, you might want to think of a better way to exit next time. But for a child who's maybe like 5 or 6, you might start chatting to them and say, what would make this easier? They might choose something so random like a song to play in the car.
Right.
And you're like, okay. But you hold your grounds, you hold boundaries. We're teaching them to become human beings living in a society that has rules and laws. So we're teaching them life values and skills.
I love that. I mean, that's super valuable, especially if you bring them into the decision making. That must empower them as well. That must make them feel that they have a say.
Exactly. Their voice matters for sure. We're not here to order them around. So it's not about obedience. It's not about you do as I say. It's more, these are our family, united rules. This is what we do. So, for example, if it's about hitting, my boy, when he was around 2, he went through a phase of hitting. And they often do either hitting or biting or something like that. And instead of me suddenly shouting, no, don't hit, you can't hit, because if you think about it, if you stop and think about it, no one has told him that before. No one laid out their clear rule of we do not hit. So we stop and we communicate that boundary. And we do it again and again and again with a young child. And I think I've said it like more than 50 times, in a calm zone, not in the challenge time, like maybe later on that day or the next morning. And we just talk about it, that hands are not for hitting. We don't hit. In our family, we don't hit. And you keep repeating yourself, so that one day when he actually hits, you can just, cite the rule. You can just say, hands are not for hitting. In our family, we don't hit. And you hold them accountable to take care of the child they've hurt, or if they've broken something, to clean up the mess, to fix what they've caused. And it might be fetch an ice pack or a cup of water or some cream, to teach them the natural consequence of what has happened. So yes, the rules, The boundaries have to be communicated, they have to be respected, and the child is held accountable for what they've done. Now, it wouldn't make sense for me to go, oh, you've hit your sister, then no TV for a week. That makes absolutely no sense. It's not connected, you know, but it would make sense that we need to take care of your sister now, because that's how it happens in the real world.
Right. So you're teaching them natural consequences of their behavior. I love that. So we have been talking for a while, and I've already just learned so much from you. It's incredible. And your voice is so calming. One final thing I wanted to mention was I saw that you do, so I actually took part in the I Am Remarkable workshop. It was incredible, especially as a woman and having to go through this I Am Remarkable workshop. I was just curious to understand what kind of capacity you do that with, and do you do that with parents, or is that more of a corporate kind of training that you do?
Yeah, I don't do that with parents usually. I started doing that when I was working with Google, and I was certified to become a trainer for I Am Remarkable. And I believe it's really strongly linked, because as parents, we can only be mindful if we are empowered ourselves. I Am Remarkable is an initiative by Google that empowers women to speak openly about their accomplishments, whether that's at work or beyond. And it's not just for women, it's actually for anyone in an underrepresented group. So I've done that in the corporate world. I've done that for companies that have asked me to do it. I've done that for groups, just like on my social media. I would ask if there's any interest, and if I can get a group of 10 people, I'm happy to do that for them. It's a free workshop. It's 90 minutes. It really leaves the person super empowered after it. It's magic. I kind of do it for a selfish reason as well, because it leaves me empowered as well after it. And yeah, I'm happy to facilitate it for anyone who would like me to, as long as they have a group of around, 8 to 10 people. Having said that, what I wanted to say about, empowering and why I like to do it repeatedly, it's very similar to mindful parenting. It's because you need to imagine mindfulness like a muscle that you need to keep exercising. And, speaking about your accomplishments, it's the same thing. If you stop exercising, if you stop flexing that muscle, it becomes harder. And if you keep doing it, if you keep, getting reminded of it, attending workshops, reading books, practicing, journaling, speaking to others, with mindful parenting, if you keep practicing, noticing situations, checking what's the need behind the behavior, checking what are my triggers right now, that's you flexing the muscle, making it easier for next time when there's an emergency to actually be able to access these parts of you. So yeah, in both I Am Remarkable and with mindful parenting, I definitely recommend that you keep practicing. I completely acknowledge it's a very hard work. It's really hard work. It only gets easier with practice.
It's like going to the gym.
Yeah, exactly. You can't run a marathon straight out of your couch. You have to practice.
Pascale, tell us how we can connect with you, how we can find out more information, and tell me more about your workshop as well, so our listeners know what you do in your workshop and what they can gain and learn from the workshop that you run.
Sure. So the best way to reach me is Instagram, Moment of Parenting. I also do have a website, momentofp.com. However, as usual, Instagram is much more updated, and quickly you can reach me. The workshops that I do right now, I offer a 5-week workshop, 90 minutes each week. We meet each week to dive deeper into one topic. Like I said, the first one would be all about you. The second week, we discuss the parenting relationship. What do our kids really need from us? The third week, we dive into discipline. The fourth, we talk about the environment, the home environment. And in the fifth, we do kind of a recap, commitment, and we speak a little bit about play as well. Now, the next workshop is in September. It starts on the 1st of September. The link to sign up is already on my Instagram account and the link in bio. I usually do it every month, but I'm taking July and August off for the summer. And in September, I'll hopefully be also launching a 12-week program. So the 5-week workshop is a group workshop where we are a group of at least 5 parents. And by the way, the fee is the same whether you join as one parent or as a couple, because I love to encourage, the whole family to be on the same page. The 12-week program is more individual. You go through it just you or just you plus your partner, but it's not a group thing. And that's a more condensed, that's someone who really wants to dive deeper into mindful parenting.
Thank you so much, Pascale. I will link all of your details into the show notes so the listeners can find you easily. And even just going on your Instagram page, there's so much to learn through just the posts that you share with the audience, because there's so much value in just reading through that as well. So do go and check her out. I strongly recommend it. Thank you so much for today. Like I said, I can't thank you enough because I've learned so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for this opportunity. I love to chat with you.